You're listening to the Team Stripes Podcast, the podcast for hockey referees. Each show, we discuss the world of officiating and find out that not everything is black and white. Here are your hosts, Daniel Spence and Brandon Bourgeois.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon coming to you live with another episode of the Team Stripes Podcast. This week we have a really special guest coming to us on the podcast. His name is Craig MacKay. Now, Craig is a really excellent official who refereed mid AAA and was a linesman for university and CIS hockey here in Canada. He's originally from Fredericton, New Brunswick, out in the Maritimes, and he recently moved out to Ottawa about 10 years ago, and since moving over to Ottawa has really taken on a mentorship role with one of the local Ottawa districts. He's really done a really terrific job and is well known in the Ottawa referee community for building a great mentorship program. And so I thought this would be a great guest to interview for those that run your own districts and are looking to mentor young officials and really help them move up. So without further ado, we welcome to the podcast Craig MacKay. Craig, thanks for coming on to our podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Big fan of the show.
Big fan. We haven't been on for more than 2 episodes, but obviously you've been following those 2 episodes like a hawk.
Some of the content, yeah. It's looking pretty good.
So anyways, we're sitting in Craig's lovely living room here in Ottawa, and we are going to, well, I guess we're having a beer right now. I don't know if we can say that for the podcast, but
having a cold homebrew.
And it's one thing that's definitely made this trip a little nice, a little nicer than the previous podcast. But anyways, I'm really glad to have Craig on the show today. He's been a really great friend to me personally, my time in Ottawa, and he's a great referee, and he's really involved in the referee community here. And the big thing for Craig is he's really involved in the mentorship aspect of helping out young officials develop. So that's kind of hopefully a big topic we're going to talk about today. But Craig, I would just love maybe if you can kind of give the listeners maybe a background on yourself and kind of your origins in refereeing and how you got started.
Yeah, sure. No, I started when I was 11, living in Fredericton, New Brunswick at the time, and it just seemed like a great way to get some extra ice time and get out on the skates, and a way to make, I think we were earning $6 for a novice game at that time, so it would have been 1991. And it just kind of went from there, and I started to like it, and I was having so much fun reffing that I actually stopped playing hockey after 2 years because I was having more fun reffing and hockey was getting in the way. So I did that for a number of years up through minor hockey, and then I got a chance to do some competitive stuff and got into junior and CIS in New Brunswick and in the AUS, I guess it was then at the time. And I worked a little bit of junior, there was a really good senior A league out there, which was very entertaining, and we had our fair share of gong shows and police escorts out of towns and different thing. But that was a lot of fun, and we had a great bunch of guys, and I worked with we were a small group of guys that worked all the competitive hockey, and they're been best friends to this day. My wedding party was exclusively reffing buddies, so these guys are lifelong friends, and it's been great. And then I moved up here to Ottawa and worked a little bit of junior here, and then I got into working for a living, and it was
got a real job.
And the show was certainly not in my cards, but I I'm in IT, and I got a job doing that. And the late nights and travel on the junior circuit were getting a little tough, and like I said, I'm going to work some local hockey, just some midget and juvenile stuff, some house league and a little bit of Rep B competitive, just enough to keep skating. And it's been great. And then I got into trying to give back. It was time after all those years, after 20 some years of getting a lot out of officiating. It was time to give some time back. And I got an opportunity to help out with the mentorship and recruitment here in one of the Ottawa districts. And kind of went from there.
Jeez, you're talking about those old senior, as soon as you say senior A or whatever, I can picture those games too. I've done a few in some pretty rough rinks there, and they don't, it's not quite as the same as it used to be, I don't think, but geez, I hear some of the stories that you guys tell about those days, and it seems like it was something special. And I guess you don't see that anymore, huh?
We could fill another whole podcast with stories from the New Brunswick senior leagues.
But anyways, like I said, Craig's been a really great personal friend to me, and being somebody from New Brunswick as well, I guess raised a good deal of his life in New Brunswick. It's been a nice connection to have, and certainly he's helped me out and kind of progressing through the levels. But yeah, like Craig was saying, he's had a really great career. Like he's mentioned to me before that it was capped off by a Air Canada Cup, which I guess is called the TELUS Cup now. An appearance there with the young Sidney Crosby. That was
career highlight right there. That was the top.
And they say to this day that Craig might have gave him the advantage and the push that got him to the NHL. A couple good face-offs that helped him out.
Yeah, there you go.
So you could very well be looking at a big reason why Sidney Crosby is who he is today. But like we were saying, like a big part of of what you do now is helping out new guys. Like certainly you've been a help to me. And mentorship's been a big kind of, big thing in the community that you've been involved in. Like, what got you? What made you want to get into the mentorship side of things?
Just to get a chance to work with the kids. Like I say, I've gotten so much out of it, and it's such a great activity for young people to be into. When like I go into job interviews still, in the IT world, and use examples when they talk about, when's the time you had to deal with conflict or whatever. Like I use examples of being in like a New Brunswick senior hockey rink and 5,000 people trying to kill me, right? Like you learn a ton of life skills, and it's really phenomenal for these, 12, 13, 14-year-old kids to go out there. They learn so much decision making, and you gain so much confidence, and it's such a great teamwork sport, to be on the team that nobody likes, you band together and, they just learn to back each other up, and I've gotten a ton out of it. It's been a great part of my life, and I hope to do it for a long time yet. So that was kind of it. Like, how can we get more kids doing it, and how can we get more kids to stick around longer? Like, I see it as a goal, to have kids do it for their lives, So if we can get them by those first few years, then they'll usually really get hooked, because it can be addictive and a lot of fun. So like if we can get them through those tough first years with a really good program and lots of support, then they'll do it forever, And, sometimes you get to work with guys that make it to the pros, like the guy I'm talking to right now, right? So that's phenomenal and like totally awesome. But it's just as great when someone decides they're just gonna end up doing it for their life. They may not get to anywhere higher than Bantam AAA or whatever, or maybe they're gonna be reffing men's league till they're 60, and that's great. So just any opportunity to be able to help them out. So that's kind of why I was interested.
Yeah, and like I think you were just mentioning about how it's like getting past those first couple of years, because every guy that there's a reason why they're still involved, but so many guys that I know that have been doing it for a few years, they just get hooked, like you're saying. They love it, and it's like it's become part of a lifestyle. You're saying that you still talk to the guys that went to that you've kind of grown up reffing. They went to your wedding and everything, and I feel the same way. That some of my best buddies now are referees. But the big thing you're talking about is like that big hump you kind of have to get over, where it's those first couple of years where you need to make sure they kind of stick around. And I mean, we hear about that all the time, about how many referees just quit because of whatever reason. Like, what do you see the big, challenge to combat there? Is it just the abuse from the coaches, the players, the pressure? What do you think is the big kind of?
I think that is a big issue. Like people, you're only making, well, it was $6 when I started, but kids are making, 19 or $20 now to go out and referee a novice or an Atom game. And, that's better money hourly than working at McDonald's, but not by a ton. So, you're not going to get yelled at McDonald's. You're not going to get people swearing at you at McDonald's. So if you end up kind of in that area where you start to get frustrated with the abuse, I'm not saying that the abuse is the only reason people quit. And I don't know, Canada would have better stats on how many kids stick around and maybe like knowing why they're leaving. But in general, like if we can get them over that hump, and get them to the point where they give them the tools to be able to deal with that abuse on that side of things, then, hopefully they'll stick around and get to the point where they find it fun. For the first, every kid is different, and sometimes they might find it fun after 2 or 3 weeks and be like, oh my God, this is a blast. Yeah. But sometimes it might take them a year or two to kind of get over that, get the confidence to be like, wow, I'm really looking forward to go out on the ice today. Yeah. So, like I say, there's lots of reasons I think why they quit and why they stay, but we're just trying to give them the most tools that we can to make them want to stick around. And
I think a big reason why I think it's really special to get a chance to interview you is because, and I know you've told me this in the past, but our district here in Ottawa has some such as having to turn kids away basically from refereeing, which is pretty amazing. Which you think? I mean, I know back home sometimes there's some issues with recruiting officials. Yeah. Finding young guys that are, that want to, referee. But here you guys have done something pretty special where correct me if I'm wrong, but you had upwards of 70 kids apply this year, and you had to turn away the vast majority of them because you only had so many spots. I mean, that's pretty remarkable, I think, for refereeing. And like, what's the secret behind that?
Well, I don't know. It's certainly not any credit to what the program that I ran, because when I showed up, we were getting 70 to 100 applicants, and we can only take 16 of them. So I don't know if it's just purely the volume of people up here or what. But there probably is some credit to a lot of the mentorship programs that are being done, that parents are more comfortable encouraging their kids to do it, and the kids are seeing hopefully a rink these days that is not as abusive and not as, they're interested, they want to do it. So hopefully kind of what they're seeing is making them want to sign up and go for a skate. But yeah, we get a ton of kids, and I think one of the biggest first thing is getting the right kids. Mm-hmm. We have a huge number of applicants, and when it's like that, you have to run them through a bit of a process, and we do sort of 3 equal parts when we assess them. So we'll have a skating part. Obviously, you got to be able to skate to some degree. We don't need everybody to skate like Sidney Crosby, but we need people to be able to skate. Yeah. And then we need people to have an understanding of the rules. So we have a little quiz that we have them do. It's like a simple 15-question rules quiz with a few tricky ones thrown in, and it's open book. And we say, hey, go here's the link to the Hockey Canada rule book online. Here's 15 questions. See what you get. And if they're willing to put in that effort to figure out the answers to those questions, even though they, some of them they'll just know, but probably about half of them they got to look up. Yeah. If they're willing to put that effort in, then that's great. The kids who get a couple questions wrong on the quiz means, well, maybe you're not as into this as you thought you were, right? Yeah. And then we have sort of a written almost exam. It's kind of situational. Tell us about a time where you had to deal with conflict. Tell us about a time where you had to make a quick decision, or you had to use teamwork or whatever, because those are all such big parts of what we do on the ice. And I mean, all these kids are 13, 14 years old, so sometimes they're talking about conflict, breaking up a fight between their brother and sister, and that's fine. Oh, yeah. But it's a matter of them going through a process, and we grade all of those separately. We have a whole bunch of people evaluating the skating, and then other people evaluating the written answers, and then the quiz kind of marks themselves. It's automated, but we evenly weight all of that. So just because you're the best skater doesn't mean we're going to take you if you blow all the rest of the stuff. Right. And just because you're the best on the written, well, if you can't skate at all, that's not going to work either. So we try to take the best rounded group out of that and accept them, and try to make sure we take the right number. Because if you take, if you go and take 30 kids, there's only so much hockey. So we really felt that they need to work about 40 games a year. Okay. And if they're not going to be, if you take 30 guys, then it's really hard to get everybody 40 games. So the sweet spot for us with the amount of hockey that we have, and this will be different for every district, but the sweet spot for us was right around that 16, 14 to 18. One year we took 20. Yeah. The next year was 13 because a lot of them stayed. So you're kind of always looking and seeing how many are sticking around. Yeah. But yeah, it's about getting the right number and the right kids. And then another thing that I've noticed in the last few years is that you got to be a little bit careful with how much time these kids have too. So sometimes you'll get these kids playing AAA, right, that want to referee, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I want to referee, make a few bucks or whatever." Yeah. In a lot of cases, we've taken that kid because they've done pretty well in the skating. Obviously, they're probably one of the best skaters, and they do okay on the written, enough to get in. But they don't have enough time in a lot of cases. So in my experience of doing this for 3 or 4 years, however many it's been, a lot of the ones who've been the most successful looking back were the really good house league players, or the kids who were playing competitive B or something that had, they have the time to dedicate to being able to, they can work the actual assignments that they get. Right. Maybe pick up a few games on trades when people can't do them, and they actually get out there and get some experience, and they build that confidence early. Okay. So it's, that's a big part of it, is getting the right kids. And, we cast a wide net, obviously, because a lot of people want to do it. But trying to have some tools to be able to sort through them. And again, this is a problem that a lot of places don't have, maybe. We're spoiled by all the people that want to referee here. Yeah. But, it's a good problem to have.
Okay, and this is a great information, I'm sure, for listeners out there that run their own referee districts and that are kind of, interested in finding out more about this. I mean, what are typically the ages that your guys are letting people in? Do you guys aim for a certain age group to get people in? Is it, does it vary? What do you look for?
Yeah, Hockey Canada, I think, says 12 years old is the minimum. We said 13. Districts can kind of decide sort of what they want.
Right.
I think some of the districts in the Ottawa area are even as high as 14, but we found that 13 was pretty good. I find personally, like, I like to get them younger and get some experience into them, because if they want to make a run at doing this like professionally, like if we're 90%, 99% of the officials that we hire are not going to make the NHL, more than that, right? Like almost everybody. But if people want to have a shot at it, then, if you start at like 15 or 16, you're out doing novice hockey, you're just figuring it out for the first year or two, and then all of a sudden, you're 18 and you're just getting into maybe some competitive hockey. It's almost too late. It's hard to really jump into that. Some people are exceptions, but like in general, like I started at 11 back then.
Right.
And, by the time you were 15, you had 4 years in. You'd lived through a few gong shows and you had an idea of what was going on. So, like, obviously we don't hire them that young anymore, but, our minimum is 13 and we try to get 13, 14-year-olds. I found in my experience has been the best. Not to say that we don't hire 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-olds that have come in and done great.
Yep.
And again, the majority of people, we're just trying to hope that they'll come in and have some fun and be a lifelong official maybe if things work out. Yeah. But you want to also consider the fact that, hey, we're also, Hockey Canada is still a main feeder for the NHL. So, we want to, if they qualify at a young enough age, then we want to have them.
Okay. No, because, that makes sense to me. And like you're saying, there is kind of exceptions that you can have the guys that come in. But, a lot of the guys that I referee with, certainly they kind of had to go through those challenges of even doing, starting out with novice, like you're saying, but even taking a couple of years to work, a junior B circuit or having that time to really grind it out. Yeah. And it's tough because I've seen some guys that, go right from playing to refereeing pro a couple of years later, but it's tough because, it takes you a long time to get to see all these weird situations I found personally.
Absolutely, yeah.
You could have this when you're, 18 years old and refereeing a junior B game out in the middle of the country. Yeah. You could have this random situation that you'll never see in your life, but it's those little memories and those little experiences, those lessons that, I think that's where you kind of learn these little things. And,
absolutely,
if you get into it late, maybe you don't.
Yeah, that's it.
You don't get to see those.
If you're in the junior B circuit by 18, then you've got a couple of years in there, and then when you're 20, maybe you're experienced enough to be able to pick up and go to the next level. But all of a sudden you're 23, 24, just getting into junior B, then it's like it may be a little bit late for the show. Yeah,
so. And it's not to say that you wouldn't be a bad, you wouldn't be, you wouldn't be a bad official or anything. But I think it's interesting because like that's the one thing I've taken away from learning from the pro guys is that. Maybe you can be a great referee, you can be a great skater, great feel for the game, but you might run into a situation that you'll never, you'll see once in your career. Yeah. But if you saw it in junior C back when you were 16, you can learn from it. It takes a while to really get this experience. So I think that's an interesting lesson to take away. But, getting back to kind of how you've, mentored, obviously tryouts and, kind of the application is a big part of it. But obviously there's a lot more to that once you kind of get through that. Like when you get a new official that comes into the district, how does that look like for them? What are the first few steps? Are you putting them on the ice right away? What is kind of your practice there?
That's a great question. So what we will do is we'll have like 2 or 3 on-ice sessions for them. Hockey Canada has really gotten into like actually integrating some on-ice stuff into their clinics. Because previously, and when I started doing this, they would go to a 1-day Hockey Canada clinic and they would write their test and they would talk about a bunch of stuff and then they would be certified to referee. And they may be literally stepping on the ice for the first time, to referee their first game without any help. So we tried to and Hockey Canada has started integrating. I'm not sure if that's Hockey Eastern Ontario or mandated by Hockey Canada, but either way, around here they do get 1 hour, I think, with the clinic. But previous to that, we were getting them out for 3 separate sessions where we're just kind of really going through the basics. Like, how do you start the game? Like, okay, here's what we would go over the game sheet process in the dressing room before we would go out. And then we get out there and be like, oh, here's where we're going to stand for the start of the game. Because, no matter what, you still end up with in some of the first weeks of the season, you'll see a new official who's dropping the puck, in the end zone with their back towards the goalie. So like we go through just where do we stand and practice some face-offs. And then we have a bunch of, other mentor officials out there acting as hockey players, and we run some offsides and we practice just signals and all this stuff. So we go through all of that sort of stuff to get them started, and we try to have at least 2 or 3 ice times for them. Yeah. And then once they go on the ice for that first game, we use the buddy system. So we will have someone on the ice with them who's a senior official who's just wearing like a tracksuit and they don't have a whistle, and they'll go to the coach at the start of the game and say, hey, this is little Johnny here, or little Suzanne, or whoever it is, and say, here, he or she's working their first game today, and I'm here just to help with the positioning, and I'm not here to make any calls. Like, they're going to do it all, but I'm just here to kind of help direct. And usually the coaches are just beside themselves happy with that, right? Because they're like, okay, that's great. We don't have to worry about this new person just kind of being all over the place. So they're happy to be able to support that. And we just kind of would follow the official around in the end zone, because if you go to supervise that first game for little Johnny there, and you go in the room afterwards and say, oh, you remember in the first period when you were standing a little bit lower than on the dot, like, he's not going to remember that.
No,
like, he's
exactly.
just as a fire hose pointed right at him and is just taking it for that first game. It's just trying to survive it. So if you can actually go up to him and tap him on the shoulder during play and, hey, move over here a little bit, then that makes his life a lot easier, and they'll usually remember some of that stuff. By the second period, maybe you're hanging out down in the other zone and watching from afar, and for the second game of the set, maybe you're in the stands or standing in the penalty box and just coming out when you need to. So that's one thing that we do for them. And then also we will make sure that for that first half of that first season, they're up until Christmas, they were out on the ice with an experienced partner. So we have ratings for all of the officials, like a lot of districts do, and for all of our new officials are working either novice or Atom House League hockey, and we will make sure that their partner in that two-man system game is always rated at least as a peewee ref.
Okay. So
they are absolutely more than confident to be able to go out and call whatever happens on the ice, whether it's in their end or not.
Right.
And we'll the buddy, like the senior mentor, will explain in the room, like, hey, this is little Johnny's doing his first game, so don't hesitate that if you're at center ice and something happens that you think is a penalty, call it. We explained to both of them, you can call penalties anywhere on the ice. But having that experienced partner usually helps quite a bit too.
Yeah.
But we also encourage the new official not to lean on that partner too much. Like, if you see something you think is a penalty, call it.
Yep.
And I had a process where with the kids I would say, hey, when you finally call your first penalty, I want to get a text message after the game or an email or call me.
Right.
Because a lot of them that's the thing they're most scared of, is calling that first penalty. And it sounds kind of dumb, but when you think about it, they're probably playing, like, if they're 13, 14, they're probably playing Bantam hockey. And guaranteed they've seen some referee get lit up by a coach or a parent or something over their, almost 10-year hockey career at that point. Mm-hmm. And that's what sticks in their head probably. They're like, oh my God, if I call a penalty, everybody's going to get all upset,
right.
But realistically, when you call a penalty, 99.9% of the time, the kid goes and sits in the box, we drop the puck, and nobody says anything, right? So They need to kind of experience that. And I want to know that they've called their first penalty. So I challenge them to say, hey, if you're out there for, on a Saturday and there's 3 novice games, like, there's probably a penalty there somewhere, So I want to hear it. I want to get a call when you call your first penalty.
Yeah. And what type of reactions you get from those guys that are texting you or calling you?
Yeah, they usually they seem kind of proud. They called their penalty, and I ask, hey, what was the reaction? And they'll always say, oh, nothing happened. Yep. Everything was fine, right? And then they get the monkey off their back, so to speak. We tell them, like, you may be a referee, but you don't earn your stripes till you make your first call.
That's right.
So that
first hair on your chest or something.
Yeah, and I explained to them too that a lot of the parents that are in the stands and the parents that are coaching the team, like, they're just as nervous about their little kid out there because they're playing novice hockey and it might be their first game.
Right.
And they would much rather see that young official call something that was maybe borderline than let something go that was blatant.
Right.
So, like, just call it. I mean, a lot of the people in the rink are thrilled to have you call a penalty. Mm-hmm. And that extends even to the higher levels. Like, sometimes people are saying, oh, geez, you let a bunch of stuff go. That's what people want. Well, normally they just, even at the highest levels, they want consistency.
Yep.
And they want to know that the rule book's generally going to be enforced. So even supervising the older guys, we try to say, hey, don't let the game call you.
Right.
Don't let the game get to the point of being almost out of control and call something because you have to. Call the penalties at the start of the game, and as they are. And then, you know what? The hockey players are smart. Every hockey game is like training a new puppy. Like, they're going to say, how far can I push this guy? Yep. And what's he actually going to call? And if you just call it right in the first period off the start, they know. And then usually for the whole second half of the game, you get almost nothing, and you get a hockey game. Yep. So that we try to instill that in the kids early. and even with our senior officials.
That's a really good practical lesson because, I mean, I think when I kind of was always watching referees like on TV on the NHL, you never used to see that many penalties.
Yeah.
And so when I started referee, I thought, oh, okay, well, that's how I got to call it. And you always hear the old saying, let them play. And that's kind of the way that I approached it. But then you realize there's a lot more that goes into it than just, letting them play. Like you're saying, like enforcing that standard early and, cracking down so that the second and third period can be relatively, penalty free.
Absolutely.
And the coaches like that, because if there's a penalty, a power play goal, something early, at least you have the rest of the game to even it up or to, play.
The team can catch up, whatever. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's those last, second, third period where those critical calls that you haven't seen all game, they pop up. Yeah. That can really bother teams and coaches. And even as a linesman, it's the same thing with, enforcing face-offs.
Absolutely.
You crack down hard early, so by the second and third, you can kind of loosen up maybe a little bit.
100%. Yeah, they learn. The players on the ice, whether they're kids or whether they're playing the American Hockey League, are going to know what this guy's face-off standard is tonight and how far they can push it. And if you can be on them early and just be solid, they're going to learn. Their life will be a lot easier all the time.
So I think that's, to me, that's a very good lesson, I guess, to teach these young kids. And I was reading a good article with Ron McLean, who I know you watched. We were watching an interview with him recently, but basically, he was talking about how a game is like holding a bird in your hand. You hold it,
Yeah, that's right.
What's the saying? You hold it too tightly, the bird dies, and you let it go. You open your hand too loose, it lets it go. So the same sort of philosophy for I guess refereeing hockey, where you crack down too hard, you can kill a game, but like you're saying, you let it go, and then stuff can hit the proverbial fan, right?
100%. So, yeah, that's a really good comment by McLean. I like the bird analogy.
So it's interesting because obviously you can tell that to a kid, but there's always kind of that, like you're saying, that in the back of their head, they're waiting for that coach to freak out, and that's kind of that big hurdle, I guess, that kids kind of have to struggle to get over. I mean, what sort of lessons do you teach them in respect to that? I mean, I know you have some really popular seminars that you put on for the districts. Like, how do you talk to kids about?
We have to find a better name for it, probably. That, for lack of a better term, we have a segment called "Dealing with Douchebags" that we use usually in one of those 3 on ice sessions. Well, we've got the kids on the ice. Myself and a few of the other senior officials will act as coaches, and we'll kind of freak out and slam some doors or whatever. We'll make them throw us out of the game or make them give us a minor penalty, a bench minor, and then, keep going to the point where we're going to get tossed out and make them kind of go through the process. And we have fun with it and joke, and a lot of the kids get a big kick out of it. Yeah. But it does prepare them, I think, a little bit. We really just kind of go through the ladder system of like, okay, you got your one warning. And it's tough. It's tough for a 13, 14-year-old kid to look at a 45-year-old coach and say, hey, coach, that's enough. Like, if you do it again, you're going to get a bench minor and skate away. Like, it's easy for them to, it's way, way easier for that kid to just take it, for them to turn and actually tell that coach. So we try to go through that process with them and have them do it a couple times, even though it's kind of in a fun way, in hopes that they'll be a little bit more prepared. Yeah. It's hard to really prepare them for that. Yeah. But we hope that process, does help them a little bit.
I mean, you always hope it's something you don't see that often, but the reality is you do face it. And as to me, when I started out, and I still kind of run with that, where you have that in the back of your head, like, oh, how's the bench going to react to this or whatever. But I think that's, you're saying, it's really getting that monkey off your back and getting over that hurdle that really lets you referee a game properly.
Absolutely.
Without having that fear in the back of your head.
Yeah, it's again, it's not something that we see a lot, and I find we see it a lot less these days than from when I was a kid. Yeah. 20, 25, 26 years ago, starting out refereeing, but still it happens. You're going to get people that get excited, and they don't know where the line is. Yeah. And we really just, like I say, the whole goal is to have these kids do it for a long time and get a real good enjoyment out of it. So if we can give them a little bit of tools to be able to help them out and just do a little bit of case studies and make them kind of go through what they might see, then we hope that helps them out.
So, like we've been talking about, you have a really great mentorship plan, really one that's well known in the Ottawa area for really producing great officials and, really helping them out along the way. So we've talked about, you have tryouts, you have, application processes, you have, seminars, you have on-ice sessions. Now, obviously, I think, something that a lot of referee districts will be familiar with is kind of a supervision, how to supervise young officials. And I'm curious, what advice would you give to other districts, across the country, across North America or whatever, what kind of advice would you give to them about how to supervise young officials as a mentor?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We try to, and I never ran the supervision program here, but I've done a lot of supervising over the years. And with the kids, we try just not to give them too much. We try to say, okay, like here's 2 or 3 things to work on, but always have some positives too. And that's a common thing that a lot of supervisors are going to do. Try and make it easier for them. One of the things we started doing, which turned out to work pretty well, was the concept of a video supervision. So I would sit in the rink with the video camera. We'd just tape the game, and then I would try to make notes of when interesting things happened, at what time of the game it was. So we would have a quick supervision in the room afterwards and say, hey, you did these things great, and here's a couple things you look at. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go home and download this video, and what we would upload it, we would I would edit it and then upload it to YouTube as like a private link. So it's not public, but it's so you can email the link to the kid, and they can share it with their parents or their buddies or whatever. But we would have a series of clips, and it usually end up being a 10 or 15 minute video. Okay. And it'd be a bunch of kind of like 30-second, 1-minute clips, and it would show. Then there would be a little text bubble that would pop up and say, here's what you're doing really well here. Like, I really like where you're standing. You got a great view. You're right at using your piston system well, or whatever it is. Yeah. And they can see it. They can see themselves doing that thing right. And then the same thing, like when if they're too far in on the blue line, or whatever it is that they're not doing right, they can see it. And then the comment will come up and say, hey, like, just bump a couple feet this way. Or, you want to be, say we're trying to explain to them, you want to be about 1 line behind the play. Like here plain as day, you're 3 lines behind the play. There aren't even really 3 lines. Like, you're way behind. So that was something that got a lot of positive feedback, where the kids would sit and watch it. They'd hit pause, read the little thing. Okay, I see what I'm doing. And we would see big differences in the kids after they would have one of these supervisions. They're really time intensive, so it was hard to do a lot of them, but we tried to get every new kid into one in their first year. Yeah. Kind of, not in their first few games, but kind of between December and January, they've got a bid in, so they're getting a little bit comfortable, and where they're going to start to be able to take some from it. So that worked out really well. And then the last thing we did from a supervision perspective is we implemented a system where we would go all supervise a game together. So we would get all the first and usually second year kids and have them come sit in the stands, and we would pick like a Pee-wee competitive game or something, or a Pee-wee AA game, and have like 3 young officials or maybe a year older than them who had done really well. So they would go out and work the game. And we, as a group, we would break up into groups. We'd have maybe there's 25 kids there. We'd have 8 or 10 mentors. So there'd be 2 or 3 kids in each group with a mentor, and they would all watch the game together. Right. And just the mentors would pick out things and say, like, here, see what he did there? Like, that's where we want to be. Or like, so maybe his penalty procedure could have been a little bit different. How would you have done that? We try to get the kids to supervise. At the end of each period, we get together and say, hey, what did you see that you thought they could have done better? Or what did they do well? Or whatever. So It's interesting because a lot of these kids have been in the rinks their whole lives. Maybe playing, or in the stands watching their older brother or sister or younger brother or sister play or whatever, but they often haven't sat there and watched the referees. Right. So it's a chance
to boo them,
right? When it's usually the play's dead and you're booing them, right? So it's like, let's watch what they're doing and make sure we control who's on the ice, so we get really good examples out there, and have the mentors there to kind of pound home what the message is. So that was something that really helped out as well. All this takes a little bit of logistics, obviously, but we found they paid off a lot. And then, there's the quiz system. There's a quiz system that HEO runs to make sure the kids every month they're going through and doing their quizzes and staying up on their rules. Yeah. And the other thing we would keep track of is something that I called the effort score. So it's like, did you show up at all the ice times at the start of the year? Yeah. Did you get all your quizzes done? And did you get, say, 80% or more? You get an extra point for that on average. Did you come out to the time where we all sat in the stands? And have you been showing up to all your games on time and all that stuff? So, and have your supervision's been good? So we kind of keep track of all that in a giant, crazy spreadsheet. And then at the end of the year, when it comes time to, say, playoff time, or who's going to move up towards the end of the season, or who we're going to pick for the Rookie of the Year or whatever, we usually look at that and say, okay, who's really laid it out? Because sometimes you might, again, the best skater might shine as the best official, but really, it's kind of all of those things. How much effort did they put into it? Right. So we kind of do that too. But yeah, from the that's kind of the supervision and sort of advancement and tracking part of it. Okay.
And I'm just curious, wrapping up here, but for these, districts and, that are looking to kind of promote these officials and help them grow, and obviously, as a mentor, you've probably seen a lot of young officials progress. I mean, what are these things like? Is there some certain things that you've noticed that every official that's really done well? Is there one, skill set they've had? Or is there one area of focus you've noticed they've been very strong at? Is there certain factors that you've noticed as time has gone on that have stuck out to you as being important factors that you might not traditionally think of?
I think the thing that jumps out at me most is kind of a willingness to learn and having an open attitude towards feedback. So sometimes you go in the room to give a supervision and, the kids are just taking their skates off and barely paying attention, checking their phone or whatever, I find the kids that often have taken off and done really well are the ones that really pay attention and they ask questions and they ask for feedback. Like they want feedback and they don't want you to just come in and say, oh, you did a great game. They're like, no, what would have made me better in that game? So I think that's a desire portion on the part of the young official, but in general, I think that's it. Like anybody that's, they're probably going to be able to skate and they're probably going to generally know what a penalty is, but I find the ones who kind of really ask for feedback and listen, and try to actually implement that. Like a lot of the kids that have done well, it's like every time I see them, they're just way better and they fixed, the 3 things that I told them last time. And then we're into, and a lot of times get into supervisions with these kids and, I'll say, hey, like we're into some pretty advanced stuff for like, we're in a Pee Wee house game here, but I'm not talking about your signals anymore. I'm not talking about your face-offs anymore. I'm talking about like teamwork and how you're going to work with your other linesmen and who's going to cover that line and can you bump off when you get in trouble and make sure the other guy's got your back and are you yelling at each other and when the guys come out of the box and that kind of stuff. So a lot of times we can get into those more advanced things and they can practice them at that lower levels and then they're ready. So I think that's the biggest thing for me. It's just the attitude.
And it's cool, and this is kind of switching gears a little bit, but I remember, I'm just thinking of this now, but a couple of years ago I remember sitting in a room and I think you were supervising me. And I remember you making this distinction between the science, I think it's the science of refereeing and the art of refereeing. I believe this is something that you were telling me about how, like you were saying that there's the kind of the idea of teaching face-offs and kind of the hard stuff. Yeah. But then you can talk about the art of refereeing. And I think you were kind of talking about, your feel for the game and things like that. And I'm just wondering, like from a mentorship perspective, is there a time when you feel like a referee's kind of progressed to that level where you can teach them that? As I'm assuming, maybe a lot of your young guys are sticking with the basics, and then to switch to kind of the more nuanced stuff. Is there kind of that the way that you've progressed with that? It's sort of an odd question, but
No, it's a good one. I honestly don't remember that conversation. Either too many years has passed and my brain cells have died, or maybe it was somebody else. It was probably me. But I encourage the guys to have a little bit of pizzazz out there. I mean, to a certain level, obviously. I try to model everything that I do on the ice after Mick Magoo, the great officiating, the great officiating hero. Like I wear 19 in my pickup league in honor of Mick Magoo. I probably quadruple pump every goal that happens, so I'm not really the best person to watch reffing. But I encourage the guys to try to have some fun out there with their team. And once you kind of get those basics down, then you can kind of have your personality out there. You don't have to be necessarily Wes McCauley out there, like getting into all the different things. But I think when they know when they're ready to kind of start to develop their personality out there, and I think that comes with the confidence of just being comfortable when you get to the point where you've kind of got the basics. You've been through some gong shows or whatever. And you're like, okay, like I'm starting to get this. Yeah. It's kind of like golf where as soon as you think you've got the game figured out, it'll come back and bite you. I find reffing's a little bit like that too. So too much confidence is not the greatest thing either.
And that's one element that I always notice there's a big difference between being a player and being, a referee, because as a player, I mean, it's important to keep your emotions in check, I suppose, but your personality really isn't a big factor. It's how you play the game. But I've found as a referee, you could have the greatest, feel for the game, the greatest skating, but a lot of it comes down to personality and how you deal with people. And that's always an element that I was always interested in. So you talk about personality and stuff like that. Like, how does that play into it?
You're right. I think that's a huge thing. And I find especially at the higher levels. And even somewhat at the lower levels, like you get into bantam and midget hockey. One of the things I try to teach the kids is get along with the goalies. If you can have the goalies on your side, take a minute, talk to the goalie. Oh, geez, great save. Look at that. How'd you get across to stop that one or whatever? If you can have the goalies on your side, the first time they get bumped, they won't usually lose their mind. And I find in hockey generally when the goalies get pissed, everybody's crazy. Like everybody goes nuts, right?
Right.
If the goalie's mad. So that's one thing I try to do. And just talking to the kids during play, like, hey, good hit, keep that stick down, whatever, great pass, whatever. Like, just talk to them. And they start to feel like there's a human on the other end of that whistle. And, I find that's done a lot of good for me over the years and trying to teach the kids, like, hey, I think you get a lot of respect that way. And and one thing I do is normally introduce myself to the coach. I go shake hands with the coaches. Yeah. And I just, even in a house league game, I'm like, hey, yeah, my name's Craig, guys. Like, let me know if you need anything. And often they're just really surprised at that, but it kind of breaks the ice. And people are like, oh, I haven't heard that before, So it's kind of, it's just something, and again, people decide how they want to approach that. But I find the more, just honest you can be with people out there, usually the better your experience is going to be. And when stuff hits the fan, you've got a little bit, more respect in your pocket that you can kind of work with people and they might not go off the handle so quick.
Yeah. And I guess that's just one of really many skills that you've been able to bring to kind of mentoring referees and sort of to your program, and really helping young officials grow. And as I was saying, Craig has been a really great mentor to me and helping me progress, and I think gain a lot of confidence too, because I think you were saying, you got to bring an ounce of positivity, or you got to have that positive element as a mentor or supervisor. That kind of gives you that extra energy, and I think that was really important as an official for me. Kind of going through the ranks was that, you see somebody like you who is always so positive at the rink and who, brought a great attitude every day. And that really, I think, encourages you. So I think, personally, thank you for all your help. And I think your mentors really appreciate all the help you've given. I'm just curious, kind of on an ending note, is there something that you would like to kind of give a shout out to as a final, maybe a lesson to those listening out there that really want to produce, help, mentor young referees?
That's a tough one. I mean, this, like I say, we've had a lot of success. We've had, really low turnover in the years since we've had this program in place. I'm not even doing it anymore. Like, it's handed over to another guy because I had a kid and I don't have time to be in the rink quite as much as I used to. But we worked with a really good team to build the program, and they're doing a great job of keeping it going. But our retention is really good. I've been doing this for a lot, like reffing for a lot of years and doing the mentor stuff for a lot of years. It just means I've done it a lot. It doesn't mean I'm any good. It's like you can referee your face off for 100 years and still be terrible. But we've had a lot of success, and I think people can take, you can take any part of this and integrate it into their own ideas and build a program that would be great. So it. Anything. I think if just people that are out there that are trying to develop young officials, just try to do everything they can to give them the tools, to get as much experience in as they can, and just be a support system for them where they know that they can ask questions. Like, I think I forgot to mention the actual mentor program where each kid gets assigned a mentor, and they're just, that mentor will check in with them a few times through the season. Let's just fire them a quick email, like, how's your season going? Do you have any questions, whatever? And the kids know to, hey, like, if something weird happens on the ice,
you have that personal connection.
Hey, here's somebody I know.
That guy you can approach.
I'll call Fred or whatever and ask him about this situation. So they know that they have somebody, and that's really a big part. And it's, if you're thinking about getting in as a senior official who's maybe not working as much competitive stuff anymore, and if you have some extra time, it's a super rewarding, way to still be part of the game. Like I do, I referee a couple nights a week, but over these years I was spending more time, working on the mentorship side, and it was super rewarding to work with these kids and see them have fun, and to work with guys like you that get a chance to go and work in pro. Like it's just phenomenal to get to work with some phenomenal, awesome people, make a bunch of new friends, and these sometimes people go right to the show, so it's great. And I think people can take maybe some of this and integrate it with what they're doing, and like you say, if you just kind of give them the tools, then they'll figure it out. Yeah, and
I think even the pro stuff aside, it's amazing how I think the referee community is really, it's a family almost. And I mean, you could be refereeing, novice on a Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. You could be doing, NHL Game 7, and when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, you guys are in the same brotherhood. So I think that's
absolutely, man.
That's something I've taken away from you. And
it is a brotherhood. Yeah, it's been a pleasure getting a chance to hang out with you tonight and do the podcast, and super proud of all the work that you did in our district and giving back, and you've done a lot of supervisions and helping out with our kids and being out on the ice, and even now as a guy that's working some games in the A, it's really cool to be having you come back and work with our guys. So thank you so much for that.
No, thanks for all your help you've given me, and so I guess that's that's us signing off, and I guess thank you, Craig, for all your time that you've given, and I guess best of luck down the road, and keep up the great work and your mentorship.
Right on, man. Cheers.
Cheers.